Welcome to This Week in Real Estate with Jonathan Harmon. Listen in as him and other members of the J Harmon Home Team speak about all things real estate with local experts here in the Middle Tennessee area. Be sure to check out jharmonhometeam.com for more information and how to get in touch with our amazing team. Welcome to the show.
All right. Happy Monday morning to everybody out there. Bryan, I'm exhausted. We spent the whole weekend at the air show, the Smyrna Air Show. Always a phenomenal time. John Black and his team, and then Rich with the Air Show Network and all those guys. They put on a show.
They really do.
It was awesome.
Yes,
it was awesome. But a lot of work goes into that. One of the cool things, and I was talking to the guy that was over all the concessions for the air show. And what a lot of folks, if you don't ever participate on the back side of things, you show up and I've had this conversation with Sarah Callender and some of these other folks as well. You know, how does you show up to a Friday Night Live concert, right? Bring your lawn chair, bring a cooler, whatever. You get a little something to eat. You sit there, you enjoy the concert for 2 hours, whatever it is. You pack up and you go home. And the air show, you spend some money on a ticket. Sometimes a lot of money on a ticket, depending on what the ticket was. You walk in, you watch some planes fly around, you get some concessions, you tell your kids no 5,000 times. You pack up your stuff and you leave. And in your mind, the air show just happens, right? Because you give no thought to it because you're there for, 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever. In your mind, Friday Night Live just happens, right? All of a sudden there's a stage on the square and there's a band playing and, there's 30,000 people sitting there. And people don't realize how much effort it goes into long before that stage is ever built, long before those first planes land in Smyrna to get it there. I mean, the air show, it's easily a year worth of planning prior to the first day. And it's amazing. And the details, the fencing, right? Like all those little barrier fences that were around everything. Do you know how much money is in that? Just that. I mean, it's 5 digits.
Well, I heard a lot of people and saw a lot of complaints on social media about the price.
Yeah.
And man, there's some sticker shock. I mean, I'm looking at some of those, and I'm like, man, to take a family of 4 out here, it's going to cost me this. Am I going to get the upgraded tickets or just the general admission? I don't. Trying to decide what to do. Is it worth it or not? And at the end of the day, the air show is worth going. Absolutely.
If you have any kind of inclination, any kind of interest in that, and especially if your kids do,
the
opportunities that they have to meet people that are doing that, right? That can see it, can touch it, can smell it, can put their hands inside the helicopters, inside the big airplanes, whatever.
And it changes as your kids get older too.
Yeah.
But I would finish my thought on the cost. It's not cheap to put that on. You talk about the fencing. Think about inflation. Anytime you go to the grocery store, you're going to
fuel.
You're going to buy this much food. So to get those planes in here, to get the fencing put up, to get the people who need to get paid for work paid. There's a lot of volunteers, but there's also people that are paid, right? And so inflation hits everywhere, man. And cost of air show tickets, cost of football games, basketball games, soccer, all those things. You just expect a little bit more. At the end of the day, there's some sticker shock on that price, but at the end of the day, you're like, everything's a little bit more. So why wouldn't this be more? It costs them more to put it together.
You got 35,000 people between 2 days that show up at Smyrna Airport.
Right.
And quite literally, every single thing that goes into putting that air show on is portable and has to be brought in.
Right.
It's everything. The fencing, the cones, the toilets, the
tents for the
everything.
Vendors, everything. But I was going back, I've been going to the air show for years now. So my Facebook, I'm getting all these memories from years past, in 2016 after the Blue Angel plane crashed, and then a couple years after that. And then, there's some from even a couple years before that with my kids. And now they're 9 and 12 years old. And so we're there and they're experiencing it in a totally different way than they did before. Before it was just like, oh, cool, there's planes. Now it's like, and the people there that are standing outside of the vintage airplanes or on the crew of the C-17, they're explaining things a little bit more in detail to the kids. And Anderson is like, moving the rudders on the plane. I don't think he ever realized that you do that with your feet.
Right.
So
Right.
It's just a different level of experience. And so as the kids get older, don't think that just because they're not littles anymore that they won't have a good time. They'll actually, their experience will grow over time.
Well, and it, a friend of mine was there, and he brought his son, and his son wants to design airplanes. He wants to be an engineer.
Yeah.
And so to see him, I think he's 9, to see him watching it, walk through and seeing this connects to this and this connects to this, and then talking to the guy that trains people on it or the mechanic that works on it or whatever. And they at 9 years old, they have an opportunity to be present and gain an understanding that most folks, if they ever get into that industry at all, they don't get until they get to school at 18, 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
And he's already got at least a rudimentary understanding of, like you said, the rudders and the whatevers. And it's pretty cool when you step back and look, and you look at the cost and you look at that, but it was an experience, man.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I love their show. When we were going up there on Friday after I left, I had this kind of epiphany. I've always said I'm kind of a dork about planes, and I think that's the right way to say it. I'm a dork about planes just because when one flies overhead, I'm like, oh look, there's an airplane.
Airplane. Yeah.
You're a nerd about planes, and the reason, and I know the difference between a dork and a nerd is a dork is just a dork, right?
Yeah.
But a nerd actually like knows a lot of stuff. And has researched it, and you're telling us these cool facts about these planes.
It's one of my passions, man.
And I'm like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah, military aircraft from as long as I can remember, 5, 6 years old. Music, now beer, right?
Yeah.
And there's just a handful of things that's my thing.
Yeah.
It's
a wonder if we get along at all. I mean, I love all the same things.
Who'd have thunk it, right? So anyway, so that was pretty cool. Thank you to the Smyrna Airport, town of Smyrna, man, all the police officers and support that was there, the EMS. TriStar had a whole med tent set up there. They really know how to do an air show, and people were well taken care of. And despite the severe number of cars and traffic, you had to sit there for a little bit, but it was way better than it could have been.
Yeah. Well, just imagine if there had been no planning that went into it.
Right.
And like people are complaining they didn't do a good job. Well, they only have what they have to work with. It's not easy getting that many people. Saturday sold out, so I don't know what that was as far as attendance.
20 plus.
So getting that many people out of a place that's not designed to be an event venue.
No.
On the roads that we're not designed to
at all
take on that kind of flow. And it really just happens once every couple of years. So they're not going to just build new roads just for that. So
that's right.
They did the best they can with it.
They did a good job. So hats off to you guys. It was a lot of fun, and Cedar Glade was happy to participate in our teensy tiny little way that we participated in that. It was pretty cool. Seeing all that happen, it really hits you in that whole self-importance side of things. It's like, I think I'm pretty important, and then I show up there and it's like, I'm not important. There's way more important things, lots more important things going on.
One guy with one brewery and one tent.
That's right.
To like everything else that was going on there.
It was pretty cool. So all right, we're not going to talk about that today anymore. This is a tough conversation. This is hopefully we're going to get a little deeper understanding of what's going on in the mortgage industry, how that impacts, of course, the real estate side of things. They work hand in hand all the time, but also I used to teach economics, and one of the things that I told my students that most of them were high school seniors, and most of what I always told them is, I want you at the end of this semester to be able to read the newspaper. It's a long time ago, and understand a little bit better about what's going on, and be able to anticipate just a little bit more, be able to plan just a little bit more with your wallet, right? And just gain a little bit better understanding, so that when you hear one of the yapping talking heads, talking about whatever rates and this and that and this report and that report, you at least sort of understand how that affects you.
Right.
Right. So we can talk about all kinds of stuff, all, different treasury bonds, all these different things going up, down, whatever. But what does that mean to me? Why should I care about that at all? And that's really what we want to get to today is practical application of all the news things that are happening. So I'm a dork about that stuff and you're more of a nerd about that. So if we're going to be honest about that, before we do that, though, normally we roll a little recorded commercial for Bryan Nale, but it's always weird to have that while you're actually sitting here. So why don't you just give us your commercial? Why don't you tell us a little bit about some stuff that's going on at Primis, some stuff that's going on in your world,
Yeah.
and how you can help folks?
Awesome. Well, thank A lot of banks have a box. Because of the way we're structured, we can step out of that box. And because of being backed by a bank that's a strong and stable bank, we're able to, we're not worried about fundings. We're not worried about our access to capital. We've got just a great team. We've got my team has got dedicated processors that only work on our loans and work with us. So we get to know them, they get to know us. We kind of know how each other works, and we work together very well.
Helps you anticipate, which takes the guesswork out. Which, if you've ever been on the getting a mortgage side of things, and it's like they just keep asking for stuff. I sent this, and then the next day they ask for something else, and then the next day they ask for something. Sometimes that happens,
right? And it does.
But if you can anticipate it, you can get ahead of that a lot of times.
You can go to and just ask clients to, in one email, here's everything that we're going to need, and we try to do that in one or two, maybe three emails, because sometimes you'll get a one of those things that a client will send in will come in with a document that needs a little explanation, or maybe there'll be a large deposit that we have to go back and source. I've got one going right now with that. So, but no, so Primis is just, I think if you work with us, you'll have a great experience. Also, we've got some great technology, and that helps a lot too, just because, when I used to love it when I'd get clear to close on a client, I'd call them and I'd just kind of like, hey, how you doing? Just calling to give you an update on your mortgage. You're clear to close.
Yeah.
But now a lot of times before I can even pick up the phone to call them, they've already gotten an email that says, hey, your loan, the software picks up, hey, those loans past that milestone. It's now clear to close, and a video is going to go out to that client. It's going to be co-branded in a lot of cases. If the realtor partner that we're working with is opted in, it'll have their headshot too. So it's all coming out. It looks like you got a whole team working for you.
Which you do.
And you do.
Yeah.
That's absolutely the case. And so that kind of just the little touches that make a big difference.
Absolutely. So you mentioned several portfolio type products. I've had this conversation a lot with folks over the years, but even more so, it seems like recently this conversation has picked up a little bit more often. There's a lot of people out there that don't think that they're financeable for whatever reason, right? Maybe they've missed some bills at some point in their life. Sometimes they're down about that. They're like, "Oh, we missed a payment." And I'm asking, well, when? And they're like, "Oh, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago. I lost my job." And I'm like, "Have you talked to anybody lately?"
Let's go.
We can work with that a lot of times. So, if you remember the old GI Joe cartoons, right? It was, and now and knowing is half the battle, right?
True. Yeah.
So win half the battle and at least find out, right? And at least maybe you're not financeable right now, right? That's possible.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, let's figure out a game plan to get you financeable in 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever. But let's put you on the right track.
I'll say the biggest one to me, that the most, like, one of the most common persons who thinks that they're not financeable is somebody who, worked in a career, made good money. Now they've decided to go out and start their own business, or their boss put them on a 1099. So they're now self-employed. They think, oh man, well, I got to wait 2 years. And really, if you think about it, it's probably more like 3, because you got to have 2 years of tax returns, and it might be into the 3rd year before you have a full 2 years worth of tax returns. And with that bank statement loan, that's exactly what it's designed to help overcome. If somebody can show that they're pushing a lot of the money through their accounts, then we can just use that and the amount of deposits they've made to come up with an income number for them.
Nice.
And not have to turn in any tax returns or pay stubs or anything. We just do the bank statement loan for that person's income. And the rate on it's not as bad as you might expect, because that one's not brokered. It truly is one of our portfolio programs. It is in-house. So there's not that middleman broker, add-on percentage that you have to pay.
Very good. All right. So if you're one of the weirdos out there like me that has some different sources of income, has some different jobs, or like I said, if you made some mistakes, or life happened to you, that happens a lot of times too. Don't wait. Just at least find out, right?
Yeah.
And again, get on that track. I send a lot of folks your way. Just find out. Just ask. Let's see what happens. And you can help them also get on the path. If there is you do need to do a couple of things to get there. You can help them get on that path.
We've got a client that you had sent to me that talked with him last week, and that's exactly what we did. We came up with here's where we are now. The goal is to buy a house in April, so let's do these things now, and then we'll in November we'll take this step, and then in December we'll do this, and so we've got a plan now.
And then you follow up with them along the way to make sure that you're an accountability partner, right?
Follow with the plan.
That's it.
Right.
How's it going?
Yeah.
Oh, well, this happened. Okay. Well, that means that the plan's going to have to adjust to here.
Right.
Right. Can you make up some ground, whatever?
Yeah. How's it going? How's it feeling? That's one of the biggest things I tell people. If you're listening and you're wondering if you can afford a payment, take whatever your payment is right now, whether it's a mortgage payment or a rent payment, or if you're living with somebody for free. Get an idea from a mortgage lender on for the size house you want, the amount of money you can put down, basically how much your loan's going to be, what's the payment look like. If that payment's $2,500, but right now you're paying your parents $1,000 a month to live with them, see if you can save $1,500 a month
consistently.
Because if you can save $1,500 every month, then you'll know that you can afford that $2,500 monthly mortgage payment and still not disrupt your monthly lifestyle. Ideally, you may want to save a little bit more than that if you're not already saving some. Now, if you're already throwing $500 a month back into a savings account, then don't worry about it.
And that's your budget, right? Keep that. Then.
But if you're not doing that, then maybe maybe say, hey, I need to save $1,500 a month to know that I can afford this house payment. But in home ownership, there's extra expenses. So you really want to have a little cushion. You don't want to be paycheck to paycheck. So see if you can save $2,000 a month. And if you can, then that $2,500 a month payment is going to be a breeze for you.
Right.
And you don't have to be intimidated by it.
And meanwhile, in 9 months, you've saved up a sizable down payment.
Now you're a better buyer. You don't have to negotiate for the seller pay your closing costs.
Right.
You don't have to look for the down payment assistance programs because you've got more of your own money that you can use.
That is win-win advice right there, sir. Good job. All right. So let's get to what today's topic is going to be. There's a little anxiety about this. And it's funny. You sent me a text message that said, I won't repeat it verbatim, but basically you said that mortgage rates went up again today. Just because why not? Right.
They've calmed down a little bit since I sent that to you.
Yeah.
They opened real flat, and then all of a sudden there was a spike, and it was like, where'd that come from? Why did it do that?
So one of the things when I taught econ that people, if you can get this and can kind of squirrel this away in the back of your mind and kind of start with this context anytime that you read economic news, right, is that economics essentially is psychology with dollar signs, right?
Yeah.
It's almost always based on feelings and reactions, and this news makes investors do this and this, and all of that is behavior. And that behavior, like it or not, is influenced at least somewhat by emotion. Now, a lot of times it's influenced by history. A lot of times it's influenced by, the trickle down effect of, this news means that there's a cascade of chain of events type thing. But ultimately, it does come down to consumer sentiment and investor sentiment.
That's a great
point, and how do we feel about this news?
Yeah.
Right. What do we want because this news came out?
And then in the background of what you just outlined, there's also a casino. that's betting on how the
Yeah.
consumers are going to respond to this and betting on where the numbers are going to go. And that's your investors and your traders.
And that's all feelings too,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? And sometimes they're dead freaking wrong.
And it's data, but you're always, even the unless you're Warren Buffett, even the savviest investors are going to have some sort of feelings about, like, I don't want to let this stock go, or I don't want to let this investment go. Maybe you bought a rental home in 2020 or 2021, and you got a super low rate on it because you bought it as a second house because you do use it some, and that was legal. You didn't do anything wrong. But now you're looking at it and you're like, do I want to cash in while the market's still up? But then I'll lose that rate. And
then that goes back to, do I believe that the market's going to stay up?
Right.
And if the market comes down, will it go back up?
Yeah.
Right. What's my time frame? Well, that's all feelings.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all,
it's whatever your strategy is and all that. So, yeah.
And tomorrow we're going to get some big data. Tomorrow the consumer price index is going to come out, and then guess what happens on Wednesday? The Fed's meeting.
Yeah.
So last week was interesting because everyone kind of was kind of calm last week going into into Monday, and then the Bank of Canada rose rates, and that created a lot of uncertainty about what our Fed is going to do. Because nobody was expecting, about 50%. They were very split on if the Bank of Canada was going to raise rates. And that's another great point too, is that this isn't just national anymore.
No,
this is all global. It's a global economy, and we've seen the Bank of England really affect interest rates over here. We've seen news out of Japan really rock the mortgage.
Well, China
rates.
Sneezes and we react. I mean,
absolutely.
And
China thinks, and by the way, I heard my uncle say this one time, and I think it was probably 20 years ago he said this, and I think it's so true that we think in 4-year election cycles, and China's over there thinking in destiny. Not destiny, dynasty periods. So that's just a little tidbit there to add to the anxiety, I guess. But
that's true, and that's why sometimes we get some, for lack of a better term, we get bonehead ideas. We get people that hold on to things. We get artificially low rates that that are subsidized or whatever, and creates 31% inflation in housing in 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And because people are thinking, and I don't want to be the one to oversee rates going up.
Right.
I won't get reelected.
Not on my watch. I was having a great conversation with someone last week, and they were like, "Well, next year's an election year, so rates are going to come down."
It's entirely possible.
It's possible, but it's possible. But my comment back to him was like, "Well, for rates to come down, what it's going to have to happen?" And that's where he looked at me and was like, I don't know. I mean, it's an election year. I just figured that Biden would want to stay in office and he'd lower rates.
It doesn't work like that.
And well, it doesn't. And for rates to have to come down, guess what has to happen? We have to curb inflation. And what's driving all of this right now, what's driving every time you see rates go up significantly, it's because a jobs report came out, and people are getting hired, people are working, and people are getting hired and working, then they're spending money. And if people are spending money, then inflation's not really, it may be under control at this point, but it's not going back down.
Right.
And so my thing to him was like, if you think that Biden's going to wave a magic wand and make rates go down because it's an election year, that means he's probably going to be doing something that's going to hurt the job market. And I don't think anybody wants to be running for a re-election for president of the United States in an economy where people are losing jobs hand over fist. Now, he may not be able to control it. The work that the Fed's done the last couple of years may already have put that into motion. And I said couple of years because it's been, it's really been a year and a half, but that work has been taking place now for a while.
Well, I think that's what people have to hear and have to understand is, and it's such a weird dynamic to try to balance this out. And that is, ultimately, in order for us to see mortgage rates or rates in general return to a level that we really want, and this is you and I were having a conversation about this as well, is 5 weeks ago we were at about 6.5%, and then when I looked last week, I just hadn't really looked at, but I looked last week and it was at like 7.25. I'm like, whoa, how did that happen in a month?
Yeah. So I read an article that just this morning I was reading on Mortgage News Daily.
And by the way, when I'm throwing out those numbers, they are not guaranteed numbers.
I didn't
right?
say those numbers.
No, you didn't. But they're not guaranteed numbers. And also, when I look it up, I always look at a 740 credit score is kind of that baseline. 30-year fixed mortgage, conventional mortgage, 20% down.
That's the best way to do that. But
apples to apples.
The concept or the thing that this article mentioned that I thought was worth repeating was that 5 weeks ago, forecasts, most traders were siding on as much as a 1% reduction in interest rates by the end of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden now, due to a jobs report, due to Canada raising rates, like we talked about a few minutes ago, and just other data that's come out, nobody's saying that now.
No.
Now it's a coin flip if the Fed's going to raise rates on Wednesday or not. It's really going to come down to the jobs report on Tuesday, or the consumer price index on Tuesday. So if you're sitting there and you go under contract on a home today and you tell your lender, I want to wait, I definitely want to lock on Tuesday because the rates are going to go up on Wednesday. Make sure your lender knows what that jobs number is tomorrow. But here's the sad news for you. It doesn't matter, because the mortgage rates won't wait until Wednesday's announcement from the Fed to move.
Right.
As soon as that consumer price index number comes out tomorrow, the mortgage rates are going to move right on that news. And then because they're not going to wait for the Fed to do what it's going to do.
Sure. And so I guess if we have to cook it down to one thing, basically, kind of the premise, if you will, of the, see what I did there?
Well done.
Yeah, we'll nail it here in just a second.
Oh, man, he's on a roll.
Bam. Here in basically, and we'll unpack what this means, but essentially, if you're looking at mortgage interest rates and maybe you're on the fence right now and you're saying, I would buy a house, but man, that 7.25, 7.5 potentially, right? That or even 7 flat, those rates they're just too high, because obviously that pours right into affordability. If that's you, here's what you need to look for, right? And here's what you have to understand. In order for those rates to come down, in order for inflation to truly be curbed, right? In order for us to see a little bit of deflation, maybe that's you as well. I would buy a house once the prices come down, and I'm going to wait for those prices to come down. Well, that happens even after all this other stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, you've got one indicator, and then that trails. I mean, it could trail as much as 6 months, a year, year and a half. I mean, we don't know. For us to see some true depreciation on houses where you suddenly it makes sense, quote unquote, for you to buy a house, it could take a long time.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, it may not happen at all, number one. And number two, you may actually see a raise in prices. And then when it does depreciate, it comes down to where you were 16 months ago. And so the net gain is nothing except you lost time.
Lost time that you could have been chipping away at equity,
but
in principle.
But what we've got to see, unfortunately, unpopular opinion, is we got to see pain.
Right.
We've got to hurt as an economy in order to see that inflation fall off.
We heard so many talking heads on CNBC and in the media in general saying we want to have a soft landing. The Fed's trying to navigate a soft landing. And I think we've seen that the soft landing is going to be, all but impossible to pull off.
Well, unless we're also patient enough to do it over 3 years,
right?
Which we're not. That's not going to.
We're not a very patient economy.
Mm-mm.
Not a very patient citizenship either. I mean, social media and phone. That's
McDonald's.
Yeah, I want it now.
Yeah.
But no, it's we saw it last week. The jobless claims came out, and there were about 40,000 more jobless claims than the expectation, and mortgage rates dropped that day. So to your point, we got to see pain. Well, that means that there was 40,000 people who didn't, none of the 300 and some odd thousand probably expected to have to file for jobless claim, but there were 40,000 more than expected that found themselves, going and filing a jobless claim.
Sure.
So that's pain for those families. And so my big question, the reason I think it's important for us to be talking about this is because people make decisions every day. Not everybody makes a decision every day, but there are people every day making decisions, and having good information, having good insight into, well, how should I prepare for what might be coming?
Yes.
is so important. And for example, if you're buying a home and you're going to have a $500,000 loan, you're buying a house for $600,000, you put $100,000 down, and you're going to have a $500,000 loan. If you wanted to keep $20,000 of that back, and forget the purchase price, let's just talk about the loan amount, because I don't want to get into PMI and all that and how it plays into it. That's a more detailed conversation to have with your lender. But just at a 7% interest rate, that the difference, if you keep $20,000 in cash back as a rainy day fund, makes your payment go up about $135 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So is it more important for you now? And your answer is going to be your answer.
Totally fact dependent,
because
in your situation.
You may have plenty of retirement savings. You may be completely liquid. You may have you may already have your 6-month emergency fund. You may feel like the liquidity I have and the retirement savings I have, I'm good putting that $20,000 in equity in my house, because home equity is a wonderful part of your net worth. But there's one catch. There's only a couple ways to get that money out.
That's right.
You can either
and they're both pretty expensive.
You can borrow against it, or you can sell the asset.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have the opportunity now to go ahead and kickstart your emergency fund, then you might decide for $135 a month, I'd rather have that $20,000 liquid.
And that comes in, that exact thought process. All those same concepts come in when we're making an offer on a house, right? So list price $400K. Would you rather, if we can negotiate $10,000, right? Would you rather have $10,000 towards your closing cost, or would you rather have $10,000 in a price reduction? Right. Would you rather have $10,000 off the price, or would you rather have a $10,000 credit towards repairs? Right. All of those are questions. One is cash in your pocket right now. The other is a reduction in your payment over a period of time. And here's the thing: there's not a wrong answer to this. It's totally dependent on your situation, your risk tolerance, your security, your current savings state.
You can leverage that $10,000 credit and closing costs to use it to buy some discount points and save money on your monthly payment.
That's right.
And save interest long term. If you were fully prepared to come to the closing table with $50,000, and that's exactly where you had your numbers dialed in to be at, and all of a sudden now you got an extra $10,000 to play with, you can decide: do I want to keep that? Do I want to use it for points, or do I want to put extra on my principal?
Right.
Or a combination.
Right.
You've got that
buy a point down for $2,000, and
and you can move those numbers around a little bit, but every little bit's going to help.
And here's where this really comes into play, in my opinion, is that person that bought their first house 4 years ago, right? And their family's grown and they're ready to buy that next house, right? And that person right now is in exactly the situation that they should be having this conversation.
Absolutely.
Because they're sitting on equity, right? They're going to sell that house. They're going to have a big fat check in front of them, right? As long as they didn't, cash it out along the way, right? They have a big fat check in front of them. They're looking at that next house. Their payment's going to go up no matter what because of rates, right?
Right.
So how much can you afford for that payment to go up versus how much money do you have sitting in the bank? And, if you've got $100K in equity, maybe it makes sense, like you said, to stick 20 in, plant that seed, right?
Right.
Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're already sitting on that. So
another great example is the couple whose kids are off to college now. And they're downsizing and they've got a lot of equity. And they're thinking, I don't want a mortgage. Well, would you rather have a mortgage payment $1,000 a month and have 100,000 to kick over into your IRA? Well, you can't do that, but not in an IRA, but into a brokerage account,
a personal investment account, for Pete's sake, something.
And that's a great. I'm glad I made that gaffe with my words, because that's a great point too. Somebody could be 50 or 55, and they're still 10 years away from drawing retirement, and all of their savings. We've tricked ourselves as an economy and as a citizenship to saving in 401ks, and it's a beautiful thing, but that's where all of your money is, and you can't touch it until that certain age. Now, if you're 55 and you're thinking, I might want to let the gas off the pedal with my career a little bit and just kind of coast into retirement. Now, a lot of people aren't going to do that. A lot of people are going to go full throttle to the end of their career. But maybe you want to travel and that's what your goal is. That money in your home doesn't, like having no mortgage payment doesn't help maybe as much as having an extra $200,000 in a brokerage account that you can take distributions out of.
That's right. Yeah, I agree. It's good stuff. So, all right. So, what are the jobs reports, things like that? What are the things when we say we have to hurt a little bit? Let's get specific about that,
Yeah.
right? Because, and I think this is important. What we're not saying that each consumer, that each citizen, each person that participates in our economy has to necessarily feel pain.
Right.
The reality is, you are feeling the pain when you go and you spend what you spend on groceries right now.
Yeah.
I had not very many things in my cart the other day. Um, Certainly wasn't what I thought it would be. And I pull up and she starts checking me out. And all of a sudden I click over that century mark and I'm like,
Yeah.
holy moly.
Yeah.
I mean, $100 worth of groceries used to fill the cart up. This
Yeah.
was barely, you could still see some of the bottom. Like it was nuts.
Erica and I played a not so fun game the last time we were at the grocery store together. Like the kids were at the grandparents' house. Like very rare do we get to actually they were at our house with my kids, but very rarely like would we go to the grocery store together with
Sure.
my kids. So we're walking through the aisles, we're buying our groceries for the week and everything. We get to the checkout line. She's like, "Guess how much this is going to be?"
The wager. I love that game.
And I think I guessed like I was like I wasn't that totally naive. I was like $110. It came out to like 190.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
You don't do enough grocery shopping. do you?
No, apparently not.
Hey, I went, it wasn't too long ago. I went, Lacey sent me to get a gallon of milk. And I admittedly, I hadn't been to the grocery store in quite a while. And I walked up and it was like, I don't remember. Let's say it was $5 and some change for this gallon of milk. And it wasn't even like the good milk. You know what I mean? Like it was just
It
plain
wasn't the
old.
Horizon Organic.
No, no. And which that, anyway, I buy the cheap milk anyway. And I texted her, I'm in line. I scan it. I'm like, hey, is this a typo? Did they have the numbers wrong? She was like, you haven't been grocery shopping in a while, have you? And I was like, no, apparently not. But
no, I think that's a great question. And it's
you've been feeling the pain. That's my point on that.
Really a point too. You have been feeling the pain. Now, what's going to feel like for somebody else, and if you go back to 08, and if you were working in 08 and boy, I tell you, if for the couples who are able to get through that time period, I say the couples for the people who are able to get there through, 08 through 2012 without a job loss, really put them ahead in the game compared to a lot of their peers. Now, they may not still be, everybody's on their own track, but if you think about from a standpoint of like what other people had to go through, you've done really, you were set up well.
Yes.
Through that. And so that's a great point too, because everybody's going to feel that pain differently, for that couple who has maybe that recession proof income stream. You'll see prices come down, you'll see rates come down, or at least stabilize instead of continuing to go up. In the meantime, your neighbor, they may lose a job and be going through some really tough times. So what you need to be doing is you need to be thinking about, okay, what is it that I do for a living? Excuse me. And what is the honest assessment for my career?
And my outlook here.
If I work for X company and let's say Nissan, and we have a recession and people aren't able to buy cars, people decide to put off buying cars, not building as many cars. Am I going to have hours reduced? Are they going to go on furloughs? Are they going to go on all the way to layoffs? We see those things happen. So what do you do, and what are you prepared? How are you preparing to get through that? If you've got credit cards where the balances have gone up a little bit, is it better if you should really probably work on paying those off, because the interest that you're paying on those credit cards is.
But you don't want to drain your savings to do that either, right? There's a balance.
If you have equity in your home, now is the time to get a HELOC. Values are still high, so you still have a lot of equity. And if you, and I've said this all along,
but don't use it.
No. Don't use it. Just open it. Don't wait until you've lost your job to call your favorite local banker and say,
right,
hey, I've got a lot of equity in my house. I think I'd like to, I may be out of a job for 6 months, but I'd like to keep my house. So can I do a home equity line of credit so I can live on the equity? No, you don't have a job. You can't pay us back. Denied. Get the line of credit in place before you need it. Because if you wait, and I say this I used to say this to a lot of businesses, if you wait until you need a line of credit to get one, you're not a very attractive client.
Yeah. But again, the catch here, don't use it.
Yeah, just let it sit there. The credit card is a lot more painful to use than a HELOC if you need it for an emergency, because a credit card is going to have really high interest rates compared to what you could get on a home equity line of credit.
Especially as rates come down.
Yeah, and well, that's a good point too. Is that is if you're debating on whether to have a home equity installment loan or a home equity line of credit, with an installment loan, you start paying interest on it right away. With the line of credit, you're only going to pay interest on what you've used. And if we do find ourselves in a falling rate environment, as the Fed starts slashing rates to bring us out of a potential recession, your interest rate on your outstanding balance will go down.
Mm-hmm.
It
Right.
works. It cuts the other way too.
Right. So, I also, it is possible that we'll see home values drop. Right.
Right.
I mean, we saw a little bit of a dip over October, November, December. That little blip right there. January stabilized. We saw a little increase again. January, February, March. We're pretty flat right now.
Right.
We're not really going either direction. And then you get into the super weirdness of our particular market, where there's, for the first time that I can remember, it seems like there is more new construction on the market than there is existing home sales.
Right.
And that's not normal. So we're seeing some oddball stuff happening.
Is that a new normal though? Do you think that could be something that sticks around for a while?
I don't think so. I think that definitely goes back to a fear and uncertainty situation, right? Builders are going to build. Now, there's another wrinkle there, and that is commercial lending is wicked tight right now.
Yeah.
So a lot of those builders are using either their funds, or they're using pretty high interest building loans.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, then that affects their ability to negotiate. I mean, it's, there's a lot of things going on. It's not just a simple stick a price on something.
It seems to me that you've got a lot of people who are homeowners who bought a house. Either they owned a home in 2020, 2021, or they bought a house in those years, and their rates are really low. And there's a lot of hesitation to sell, not just
Well, of course there is.
not just because they of where rates are now, but just because of how good they have it there.
Well, and so think about this. Unpack that for a second. All right. Let's say I bought a house in 2020. Okay. And I'm sitting at let's say 3.75 rate. Okay. Probably pretty possible. Right.
Yeah.
And I paid, $450,000 for a 2,000 square foot house, 2,200 square foot house.
Yeah.
Okay. $400,000 will never touch that size house again. Right. Not for a very long time. And my rate is, 60% higher than it was then. Right.
Yeah.
So my payment is significantly higher to get exactly the same house.
Yeah.
Where is my incentive to move?
You can make those kids bunk up for the law.
Well,
right.
or you go ahead and you bite the bullet on a higher interest rate HELOC, or you somehow you tap in, you get a second of some sort, right?
Yeah.
And you build an addition on the house.
Yeah.
We're seeing that a lot.
A lot of that.
And here's the fun part about that. That takes a builder away from something else, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it all, it all just contributes to each other. Yeah.
I've been saying for a while, I feel like that there's going to be a big move towards new construction, just until people kind of adjust. And I think we're starting to see it. I think we've started to see people say, okay, this is where we are. We're going to have rates kind of bounce between the high sixes and the low sevens for a while. Now there may be some months where they go up to the high sevens, and there may be some months that go maybe they even kiss 5.8.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to live in this range now for a while, it feels like. And so people are starting to kind of adjust to that and expect it and understand.
And prices are not falling like crazy either.
Right.
They're pretty stable.
Because to me, and the answer to that, the reason for that is just the inventory.
Yeah.
Because you have all those other families that were in there at the 3.5 that aren't listing their house, and the builders can only build so many.
Yeah.
So the housing market seems pretty stable. So if you're thinking about buying, is now a good time? Buy a house? What do you say, Jonathan? What do you say to that?
I would say yes. I'd say, and here's we talked last year about there kind of being this window of opportunity because inventory was low, but demand was low as well comparatively, right?
Right.
And so we'll still, even now, we'll still see a few multiple offer scenarios. We'll still have some of those, especially on the really sweet, something that's super unique or whatever. But we're seeing FHA loans. We're seeing THDA loans go through. We're seeing home sale contingencies be accepted. I mean, we're seeing all of these things happen. We're seeing people negotiate on repairs again, which didn't happen. we've got all of the contingencies back in our contracts for appraisals and all those
Yeah.
kinds of things, with very few exceptions. That
Right.
is the rule, not the exception now.
Right.
So is it a good time to buy? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. As far as the environment goes, but you have, with the asterisk, right? With the caveat that you understand that it's expensive.
Yeah. Just understand the numbers,
Mhm.
have a good conversation with your realtor, with your lender. Insurance premiums, man, like make sure you understand where the insurance is going to be on the house you're buying,
For
because
sure.
insurance premiums, if you haven't had an insurance agent on in a while, you should do that,
I
because
should.
there's a lot going on in the insurance industry right now.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that, there's so much at play and so much to consider. At the end of the day, what I always tell people is, you're not buying a car that you're going to have for 3 or 4 years. You're buying the home that you're going to raise your family in. You're buying the home that you're going to create your memories in. So what are you willing to sacrifice to have that home that you want to live in, possibly for a very, very long time? We used to see people live in a house for 2 years, sell it, live in a house for 2 years, cash in the equity, upgrade, and every 2 years just stair step it. And people can absolutely still do that, but I think that, and when you get into an environment like this where rates are higher, prices are higher, it's more likely, and we're seeing it. The data supports it. The average time period that the average person owns a home is longer now than it used to be.
Yeah, it went from like 2 to 4 to 3 to 5, and now it's
That's close to 7, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, all these numbers matter. They absolutely matter, and I'm not discounting them. But you know, full circle psychology, this is your home. You're buying the place that if you celebrate Christmas, that's where the kids are going to come and see what Santa Claus brought them.
And even yes, exactly. It's where the dogs are gonna be. It's where, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But the other piece of that, we if you wanna appeal back to the numbers person, also where we plant a significant portion of our net worth
Yeah.
as we're paying that down,
Yeah.
right? And there's all kinds of studies, there's all kinds of number sets out there that compare the net worth of a lifetime renter to the net worth of a lifetime homeowner,
Oh yeah.
and they're significant. I
Yeah.
mean, very significant. So, all of that stuff matters. Uh, and I guess, I know you hate this term, but buy the house and date the rate, or
Yeah.
marry the house and date the rate.
Yeah.
I know that they're doing some things to kind of take that away just a little bit, um, but still, it's still true. I mean,
Yeah.
we can adjust an interest rate way easier than we can adjust the house that you raise your kids in.
I've heard it said a lot, and I think there's some truth to this. It's easier for us to get you into a home at, at at this year's rate than it is in last year's market. Now that was said a whole lot last year, but I
Yes,
think so just to add some months to the time frame. But when you can buy a house, and especially if you're using down payment assistance, I've closed more THCA loans this year than I did all of 2020 and 2021 and most of 2022 combined.
I 100% believe that.
So so now is the time to pull the trigger on that and make it happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, do I like to marry the house at the rate? It's catchy. It's fun to say. You just be aware that sometimes you fall in love with that rate, or that rate may fall in love with you, and it won't leave you. Maybe that rate's going to stalk you for a little while.
Right.
um,
Those are always fun relationships.
absolutely right. But yeah, if so, do that if you're comfortable with that number now, and then you can hope to refinance it later. You
Right.
can hope to make something, change something with that rate and that monthly payment down the road. But if you're comfortable with it now, don't wait for the market to come down, because if the market comes down, that competitive situation's back, right? If home prices start to come down and we have lower interest rates, and now we have more buyers than we do have inventory, which I
Sure.
think would persist in that scenario,
I 100% agree.
then you're right back to probably paying $20,000 over appraisal. So did you really save anything by waiting for the sales price to go down if you're paying $20,000 more than what it's going to appraise for?
Or giving up some contingencies. Maybe that actually
Yeah.
makes you more stuck because we can't
Yeah.
do a home sale contingency or
Yeah.
whatever, right? Yeah.
I haven't heard a whole lot of it, but I have heard some horror stories of people who bought homes with no inspections.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful I haven't heard more. And probably there's a lot more pain that's being felt out there from the people who did that than is being talked about. But
For the record, I only had one sale that completely waived their inspection
Nice.
because
Yeah.
I told them, "No,
yeah,
we're not doing that."
Yeah.
And that person gutted the house anyway, so
they weren't going to
yeah, I
do
mean,
what they were going to
yeah,
do.
they took it down to
Yeah.
the studs. So
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, and that's where somebody that knows how to use the contract comes in, right? So you should still have an inspection if we get ourselves in
Yeah.
those scenarios. If you find yourself in a competitive situation, have the inspection. Just eliminate your ability to ask for repairs, and then you just walk away or don't. But
Yeah.
for the love of all things
Have
holy,
some
please
protection.
educate
Yeah.
yourself.
Have some protection.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. So what are we looking for? What is favorable to mortgage interest rates in the next 2 days?
Just look for the consumer price index number to come out tomorrow with indications that inflation is being reduced, is under control. And if that happens, I think we'll see a pretty flat week.
So let's cook it down to make it really easy, right? If the CPI, the consumer price index, is not good, if they're saying, "Oh my gosh, the economy is falling,"
Right.
oh my gosh, they bring out the R word, the recession word, right? Then there's a decent chance that that's going to favorably impact
Your mortgage rates. Yeah.
which is so crazy,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it just kind of is what it is. But
I think we're at this point now, though, that you need to make sure that you understand the words that are being said, because I think there's people now who'd be like, "Oh yeah, that recession, that consumer price index looks like recession's coming."
yeah,
And there's gonna be some people who are excited for that. So,
and that's my point.
Yeah,
right. That's
like-
not good either.
no, so don't listen to the tone, listen to the words.
Yeah.
Because the tone's also going to be dictated by your source of media.
Sure.
So
Sure.
listen to the words. If the consumer price index is high, then expect rates to follow. If it comes in low, then expect rates to go down with it.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. The source matters because sometimes that tone and understand the motivation, right? So if I'm sitting here going, "Oh, recession, yeah, woohoo," is it politically motivated? Because now it's a we start beating the throw the bums out of
Yeah.
the office drum.
Yeah.
Is that what your motivation is? You don't
Right.
really give a crap about
Yeah.
the people and rates and the
Yeah.
the economy. Maybe,
Maybe.
right?
Or maybe it's that the person who's giving that information is a lender, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, recession's coming.
Yeah,
Recession. That means rates are going to get better, and I can start to refinance some of these people that bought houses in the sevens last year."
right.
So understand just what the motivation is, and it could be as innocent as that, or as innocent or as egregious as the media that you listen to.
That's true. So true. Brian, always a pleasure. Thank you for being educated and articulate enough to help us that are on the dork side of things, not on the nerd side of things. I do appreciate that very much. If you do have questions about mortgages, about a future mortgage, about a potential mortgage, about a refi, about just honestly, if you just want to be a little more educated about what the heck is going on, give this guy a call and pick his brain about about your particular circumstance and how what the heck does all this stuff mean?
Yeah,
Right.
what's mean for me? What's my situation say I should do?
That's right.
Where are my gaps? And
I think it's okay to be selfish about that. I think it's okay to ask that question. Well, what is this? What's in it for me? Right? What does this mean for me? Right? I got to live through
Absolutely.
this anyway. So how do I navigate this?
Right.
And so seek out those people, the Bryan Nales of the world, to help you figure out how to navigate that.
Yeah.
So appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Always.
Trent,
Yes, sir.
you got anything going on?
Just the usual. Always want to say thank you to Brian, as always, man. Appreciate this continued support, and always love hearing y'all go back and forth because it's great stuff and stuff we need to know about.
Trent's been out of town for 2 weeks.
I don't know which way is up right now.
Yeah.
but
How many Red Bulls are you going to have today?
Oh, 0. I don't do that.
No?
Hey, I got my energy things. I can.
Oh, those little shot things. Those are just as bad. What are you talking about?
Oh, they're actually good for you.
Whatever, dude.
They are. That's a whole nother podcast. It's a provision.
Oh, love it. Love it. All right. Well, if y'all have any questions about mortgages, give him a call. If you've got questions about real estate, give me a call. If you want to help spread the positive in Rutherford County, give our friend Trent back there behind the cameras a call.
That's right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Have a great week.
Yep.